How you going, everyone? It's Catherine Langman here, tuning in from Productpreneur Success HQ. And today I have a brand new training for you guys. Basically today what we're going to be talking about is what does a successful e-commerce business actually look like? So this came about because recently I was asked by someone in my Rockstar Productpreneur community, what does a successful e-commerce business actually look like? The person asking the question has an existing online store and has experienced some growth, some good growth over the last year, but still wasn't, drawing a big enough wage to support herself and her hubby and her kids, and was, kind of wondering if it was possible to grow an e-commerce business to that stage that, it can support herself and her whole family. And, I suppose at the end of the day, we all know growing a successful e-commerce business, or growing any business really, it's never really been super easy. And I think success can sometimes feel a little bit more elusive these days, especially considering the insane amount of growth in the e-commerce sector, for sure. You might want to call it the COVID bubble, whatever you want to call it. It's been an insane amount of growth. E-commerce has literally experienced like a decade's worth of growth in the past year, thanks to COVID-19. Now, I suppose, when we think about success as well, your definition of success might be a little bit different to the next person's. I have some clients whose idea of success is a profitable lifestyle business, the kind of business, where your work fits really easily and flexibly around your lifestyle. Maybe, you've got children and young children or whatever, and you want a business that consistently pays you an income and replaces your previous job. So that's totally cool. And then other clients that we have goals of pretty much global domination and are looking to grow really big, multiple 7-8-figure business, revenue businesses. They're looking to sell into major retailers here in Australia, as well as exporting globally, and eventually maybe selling the business for a nice tidy sum. So that's like different spectrums, I guess, and there's all sorts of things in between. So ultimately, whichever way you want to go, and whatever you define success as for yourself, a successful business, in my opinion, it does really need to be a profitable one, right? And part of my own personal definition also requires that the business can eventually operate without requiring me to necessarily be there doing the work. That might not be your definition, but for me, if it can't do that because no one else knows how to do anything, or because it doesn't generate enough revenue to hire anyone, staff or contractors, then it's not really a business, it's a job. Now, that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Of course, plenty of people do extremely well working in that way. But personally, I want to build my business as an asset. I want to be paid regardless of whether I'm sick or on vacation and can't work for any reason. And I also want to build my business, into an asset that I might one day sell. And I think probably most of my clients might be in the same boat there as well. So whatever your definition of success is, if you want to build a profitable business, there are some solid do's and don'ts that you really want to look out for, and some definite numbers and performance metrics, I guess, that you really need to be able to meet. So that's really what we're going to discuss today. And of course, as we go on, whether you are watching live or you're watching this on the replay, please do feel free to comment with any questions. And if I don't see your question live, I will absolutely come back and answer you later. And I'm just going to quickly check in to, Facebook on my phone and just see if I can see the video, make sure that it is coming through. And definitely we are live, and I can see people are saying g'day already. Atri, how you going? It's fantastic to see you here. All right, so firstly, let's discuss some common mistakes that I do see e-commerce brands making all the time. And so I just want to preempt all of this with a quick statement. This is not an exhaustive list at all. You know, business is a complex puzzle sometimes. So I just want to talk about these 3 common mistakes because they are, I really do feel like they're my top 3 at the moment. And the first is that customers don't know how or why to buy from you. Maybe the navigation is difficult, or the site is really slow or clunky, or the product value just isn't clear. And this can come down to things like making a poor choice in website platform, but it also might be because of bad design, the visual design, so not tailoring the design to the brand or to the ideal customer, or poor choice of images, etc., or poor quality images. I mean, there's various ways you can end up with a bad design. Second mistake is really not marketing effectively. So spending, and I do see this a lot, spending all the funds on the stock and getting the business actually up and running in the first place, and not leaving anything left over to invest in the marketing. But it can also, this mistake can also come from relying too heavily on one platform for marketing, like putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. I've certainly been talking about that a lot lately. And it can also be not spending enough time or effort actually building up an audience, or building up brand awareness. There's this perception, I think, sometimes, and I think this is something we all know, but it's a mistake that many of us, and I made this when I first launched too, that if you build it, they will come, and that's just not the way that the internet works. And then the other thing about mistake about the marketing not working really is not differentiating your brand or setting your business apart from the competition. So that makes it extremely difficult for customers to really work out, why should they buy from you instead of the next person. And of course, my favourite with sales and marketing is, of course, systemizing the traffic and sales generating activities. And e-commerce businesses that don't, they fail to do this, that's definitely a big no-no. And at the end of the day, we just have to figure out how to attract and convert customers consistently, so that we don't end up relying super heavily on constantly hustling or constantly discounting and all of that sort of stuff. And then I think the third mistake that I see happen a lot, and this one's a tough one, it's got nothing to do with marketing, and it's where a business runs into cash flow problems. So this happens for a variety of reasons. Certainly it can happen if there's just not enough capital up front, for sure. But, oftentimes that's not the problem. It can be about not managing the inventory and not reordering inventory in time, and therefore, running out of stock to sell. And when you have nothing to sell, you can't make any money. We definitely have seen that happen time and time again. It can also be, down to people taking too much money out of the business, especially too soon. If you're in the early days of the business, you see money come into the bank account, it can be tempting to just take it out and think that it's all there for you. But if you don't set aside funds to cover things like stock purchases or tax obligations, or, all the other kind of overheads that a business needs to run, then you can really run into some serious trouble. So absolutely, and look, I'm no accountant, but absolutely you need to get your head around just the basics of accounting. And for me, I use a accounting platform called Xero, which is pretty easy to use, and it gives you that profit and loss statement that's really easy to read. And then the other running out of money issue is where the profit margins are just too slim, and therefore just aren't really sustainable. It's very difficult if the profit margins are so skinny that you just don't have enough money to really operate and grow the business and make some money for yourself. And then I think I'm just going to add in a fourth mistake. I was only going to give 3, but I just want to kind of touch on one other, and that is, and I don't see this all the time, but I do want to mention it. If the product is not something that's actually in demand. We definitely want to make sure that we do our research before we start our business, and make sure that we're selling something that customers actually want, and for a price point that customers are willing to pay. So hopefully that goes without saying, and we can kind of move forward with this training without needing to consider that one. So of course these areas are definitely avoidable, and if you take the time to learn You can really get past them, and mostly they're fixable if you put your effort in the right place. So let's talk about what are the metrics or the performance metrics that include or that indicate, I guess, a successful, profitable e-commerce business. And I want to take a look at each one in a little bit of detail so you can see how you can try to measure and improve in these areas. And the first one that I want to talk about is actually low acquisition cost. So by low acquisition cost, I'm talking about acquiring new customers. So low, not spending too much to actually win the sale, so to speak. I think getting truckloads of profitable customers for cheap, if I can put it like that, it's kind of the holy grail for most e-commerce businesses. But how low is a low enough price does depend on your preferred profit margin, your customer lifetime value, does depend a little bit on your competitors, and I guess, the price point that the market is willing to support. And it also depends a bit on your appetite for, how fast you want to grow and invest in that growth, right? So the biggest part of this customer acquisition cost really is the marketing expense to acquire each new customer. And, even if you aren't actively spending money on things like advertising, which most of you will be, there's still a cost incurred in converting every new customer. So, at first you can, and probably most of us do, get away with simply spending your own time with the marketing and winning new customers. But as you grow, obviously you're going to be spending money on things. So, when you're more established, you might hire experts or you might hire staff to do the marketing for you. And of course, most of you are going to be spending money on advertising as well. So let's take a look at the two primary drivers behind this part of the puzzle, or this piece of the puzzle, I guess, which is, customer acquisition. And these two primary drivers are going to be your brand and your marketing efforts. So, branding, building a brand, it's kind of the fuzziest, but one of the most impactful ways to really stand out in the marketplace, and also to lower your customer acquisition costs. I want you to have a think about how many people have actually heard about your brand and know what it stands for. How are you different from your competitors? Why would a potential customer be triggered to check out your store? You really want to figure out why you are different and better, or how you're different and better, and how you give your customers a reason to come to you instead of the next person, right? So when we go through this exercise with clients, sometimes we can come up a little bit empty-handed. I think it's just something that is not always thought about. So deep down, they can't really give us a compelling reason why people should buy from them versus their competitors. And that's not because there's no reason, it's because it's just really well hidden and they don't know how to think about this stuff. So going back to the origins of why the store came into existence will often help to find that reason. And for me, if I think back to when I still had my first business, which was my modern cloth nappy brand, that reason was to help regular everyday parents to adopt this eco-friendly and cost-effective product. So how do you measure whether you are successfully building your brand? And, you can get super sophisticated about it, but, I don't want to make things difficult for you. So the easiest way to keep track of things would be to keep track of things like the size of your following on social media platforms and in groups, if you have your own groups, the size of your email subscriber list, the volume of organic search traffic rather, so people actively seeking you out. The number of people literally Googling for your brand name, that's a pretty good indicator. So obviously that's not an exact science, and I'm sure there are, and I know there are way more thorough ways of tracking it, but really in my experience, it's totally fine to keep things as simple as you possibly can, especially as you're getting started. So moving forward, the second part of this low customer acquisition cost is going to be around your marketing efforts. And really creating a strong brand initially means deciding what you stand for and also what you don't stand for, right? And so that's going to mean that you'll have a better idea of who your customers are, who to target, and where to find those people. And so that's a really good starting point when it comes to your marketing. So how do you generate consistent traffic and sales through your marketing efforts? Many of you guys have been learning from me already for a while, so you know what I like to do in this part of the puzzle. But basically, you always want to have some marketing strategies designed to attract and convert your new customers coming in, and then some that are designed to, generate repeat sales, getting customers to come back and return to you. Given your sales will all be happening on your e-commerce website, this means it really comes down to driving traffic to your store, right? And so as I discussed in my previous video, the best way to build that really strong foundation for your e-commerce growth is to drive traffic from the 3 different types of traffic source: paid, owned, and earned. So I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail about that here and now. You can go and watch that video after this one if you want to. But suffice to say, using a mix of all 3 different types of traffic strategies is really key to profitable long-term success in an e-commerce business. And because I just see too many businesses throwing all their eggs in one basket when it comes to getting traffic to their site. For example, just posting everything, posting on Instagram and not really doing anything else. And, it's such a risky way to try and market your business. All right, so that was the first key part that you need to have in place for building a successful e-commerce store: the low customer acquisition cost and the ways that you go about achieving that. The second performance metric that we really want to aim for is a high returning customer rate. So let's move into this second key performance metric that will indicate your success. And that is customer loyalty, or high returning customer rate. So this factor really does increase the lifetime value for your e-commerce customers, which is really great for profitability. And I think I've probably said many times before, we all need to convert more and more new customers in order to grow. But in order to become more profitable, we need to convert customers from one-time buyers into repeat buyers. And this is because, it's pretty expensive to attract and convert a customer the first time. Between costs like advertising or offering incentives, reducing that profit margin on the first sale, or even just factoring in your time to work on things like SEO, search engine optimization, or maybe even just networking in free groups, right? Like, we need to value our time, especially if we do want to be able to build a business that is profitable enough to pay us some profit whilst we're paying other people to do the work, right? Whereas selling more product to existing customers is a whole lot easier. And the reason for this is they're already inclined to like you. I mean, presuming you gave them a really good experience and your product was good, right? So they're already inclined to like you. They're familiar with shopping on your website already. So it's easy for them to buy from you again. It's easier for them to do that than to go and, do some more research and to find somewhere else. So, this really does help you to recoup some of those initial customer acquisition costs. And I want to state here that the average repeat customer rate for e-commerce is quite varied. So it's between 20 to 40%. So that's looking at, the global averages here for e-commerce. Whereas the most successful, most profitable e-commerce stores actually generate more than half their revenue from repeat customers, which sounds crazy. But please bear in mind that you should never expect to achieve this at the start of your business journey, right? You actually need to have a decent and growing volume of new customers before you can ever expect to generate repeat sales, right? And if you ever stop acquiring new customers, then you can kind of see your business stagnate and then potentially start to go backwards as well as your database of existing customers move past being in the market for whatever it is that you have to sell. And you can kind of burn that list out, right? We don't want to do that. So we always need to be replenishing our new customers coming through, but at the same time, we need to have strategies in place to convert more of them into repeat customers on a consistent basis. And so hopefully, you can see that, it is still it's still kind of a funnel, right? We need to have lots of people coming in the top as first-time customers, and then, we want to have strategies in place to convert them into repeat customers. And, as you keep growing, you just keep tipping more in the top, and you get more money and more revenue and more profit out the bottom, right? So customer loyalty is something that, it's the sum of a lot of important parts. So things like customer experience, as I hinted at before, product selection, pricing, brand, marketing. And notice how I did actually put marketing last. I know I'm a marketer, but I put marketing last because the most common approach to increase customer loyalty is simply to get in front of your existing buyers more often. And even though I am a massive fan of automated email marketing, and we love to use automated email campaigns to do this, to try and convert repeat customers, you can't do that if, it's never going to work if the customer had a poor experience when they first purchased. So, we need to be trying to build into our systems and processes ways to, checks and balances to make sure that customers are getting a really great experience and they're loving the product. Before they start receiving any of that sort of automated marketing, right? Otherwise, it's definitely going to fall on deaf ears and that's not going to be cool for you. All right, so the third part here that we want to move into is having healthy margins. So when we think about, these performance metrics of a successful, profitable e-commerce business, healthy margins are really important. And maybe sometimes as marketers and small business owners trying to grow our business, maybe we don't look at that often enough, but a healthy gross profit margin does make your e-commerce business a lot easier to run. So this is simply because it gives you the financial room to move, to invest in your marketing, to invest in your growth, to invest in your team, to acquire customers, to spend on advertising, to acquire customers and manage fulfillment and help facilitate your growth, right? So as a benchmark, and again, this is looking globally at averages, the average gross margins average between 22% and 38% for e-commerce, which is quite low. So my experience here in Australia, with our much higher average costs for things like wages and freight, postage costs in this country are astronomical, it's ridiculous. You guys all know what I'm talking about. The most successful e-commerce businesses that I've worked with tend to have the gross margins sitting between 50 and 60%. So most of them are actually buying at least their core products at distributor prices, or they are, of course, manufacturing their own products and they, being able to do that at a much, even bigger margin. So this really is this important factor is made up of two really important numbers, and that is revenue and cost, okay? So we've already looked at a piece of that cost, which is your marketing, so spending money on things like advertising or offering incentives and discounts and freebies and things like that to try and incentivize the first sale, right? So we've looked at that piece of the cost, but of course there are also other costs involved like product cost, so the cost to actually buy in your stock, shipping expenses, and then other overhead expenses as well. So I'm going to focus here on increasing revenue and more specifically how to increase the average order value. So, at the end of the day, selling high priced products actually can, funnily enough, make this a whole lot easier. It's going to increase your gross margins, or your total profit rather, in dollars. And this might come as a bit of a surprise, but it's actually not that much harder to sell a more expensive product, compared to a less expensive product. So it's actually not that much harder to sell, say, a $2,000 coffee machine versus a $19 fashion accessory, which sounds bonkers, right? It's not like a $2,000 coffee machine is an impulse buy. And I guess, oftentimes on larger products like that, or more expensive rather, your profit margin might be lower, so in percentage terms, but the total profit in dollar terms per order will be a lot higher on the first product, right? And I actually found this firsthand with my Modern Cloth Nappy brand, which in that business I primarily sold in bulk value packs for several $100s. And it literally was just as easy to sell an $800 pack compared to a single nappy for $35. And I will actually go further to say it was so much easier to build a really engaged raving fan base when it was the customers who bought the larger pack, they were really rusted on customers. You're not going to like rust on your bike frame, you just can't get rid of them sort of thing. And they really did become the best customers, whereas the ones who were spending way less money, they were the hardest work all the time. So how, at the end of the day, for most of you, it should really be possible to increase your average order value that you're selling on your store. So, you don't have to sell a $2,000 coffee machine by any stretch. So how can you increase your average order value even if your products are low priced? So the first is upselling and cross-selling. And so cross-selling, of course, is selling complementary products. So it might be like the $15 bottle of descaling cleaner to go with that $2,000 coffee machine. Or you could try bundling your cheaper products for a higher price. And I want to share a little anecdote from our recent client, Wild Dough, which is a Play-Doh brand. Normally they would sell individual products, individual pots of Play-Doh for about $15 each, but they also sell Play-Doh kits for around $80. Well, they do now anyway, which was an idea we introduced for them. So once we introduced those kits, not only did their revenue increase, because it was making it so much easier for customers to just do one purchase rather than try and choose a bunch of things and not really know what they needed, right? So so that it increased revenue, but it also increased their website conversion rate. So clearly it was helping customers to make that purchase decision, right? And the next thing that you want to be able to do to increase your average order value is to nudge buyers towards a higher price. So, most people will buy, most customers will buy a little bit more if you can use psychological nudges or triggers to just try and get people to spend just a little bit more. And probably a lot of you are already doing this, right? So an example is free shipping thresholds, where you need to spend a certain amount of money to qualify for free shipping. And that can work absolute wonders to, just get people to spend just a little bit more. And you want to sort of hit that free shipping threshold at around the sweet point. You're going to make good margins, but it's also not going to cost you an absolute arm and a leg to ship that order out, right? All right, so I've gone through quite a few things here, but wrapping up, I guess you probably don't have the bandwidth to explore all of this at once, right? Customer acquisition, retention, and profitability all at the same time. I certainly have trouble trying to do more than one thing at one time. I know I'm a female and I should be able to multitask, but the older I get, the harder that seems to be. So I want to kind of just talk you through a little bit of where you should focus your time depending on what stage you're at in your e-commerce business, just to make this a little bit less overwhelming. So if you are just starting out, you want to focus and you need to focus on customer acquisition first, okay? So this means brand building and marketing strategies that are going to drive traffic and convert new customers to buy from you. So this is where you're going to have the biggest initial impact in your business. It is also the least profitable stage in your business, and I don't want you to be frightened off by that at any, at the end of the day, once you can get this dialed in and you can figure out where your audience is, how you can attract them to you and convert those first-time customers and put a bit of a system around it, then you are golden and it is time to scale up. So then once you start growing your website traffic and sales, so that's the next stage, and you're seeing some consistent new customer sales coming in, you can start working on that customer retention stage. And then beyond that, at scale, it's time to really dig into the cost and the revenue and just really try and find ways to optimize each element in that equation. So that is going to be where you're making, more money and more profit that you can keep for yourself. And that'll be when you can start taking more of it out of the business and putting it into your back pocket. Alrighty, so that is what I've got for you today. I hope you found that helpful, to break it down like that and to show you, the system that you need to have in place in order to scale and grow that successful online store. As I mentioned earlier, please do feel free to hit me up in the comments with any questions at all. Or of course, you can jump on over into our Rockstar Productpreneur Facebook group and get some extra help and support in there. And you can join for free at katherinelangman.com/rockstar.